Volantex. Now, this is one of your personal favorite lines right here.
Yeah.
I know you talk a lot about them. The first one, we're going to talk about the Ranger line, first of all. That's a really kind of interesting. Again, this is the mid-fuselage pusher plane. And before I forget, I should mention, you have an excellent video called Deny the Dip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that explains how to launch these planes, because they're not quite as simple.
They do tend to dip on launch because there's a little bit of down thrust in the motor, so you have to give it the initial airspeed with a decent throw, basically. Yeah.
That's right. So, like the Bixler line is the same thing as well.
Yeah.
It's just you gotta typically throw it. I find that on the Bixler, I have a heavier Bixler, so you have to actually kind of hold it by the nose and then give it. I give it a little run and toss, and it takes off every time.
Yeah.
But the G2 is a 1200 millimeter version of the Ranger line. That's kind of I don't know. Have you ever had that plane?
Yeah, I do have that plane, and it's one of the ones that I've kept and I will keep. If you compare it a little bit to the, I have compared it to the, no, that's the wrong one. I have compared it to the
24.
Yeah, the Bixler 1 as a good beginner's plane, I suppose. It has a little bit of a big, chunky front fuselage and a small rudder, so it has a reasonable amount of adverse yaw, so you have to use rudder and extra power to get a nice turn. But the good thing about it is that it has easy access into a big area in the battery bay and behind, so you can put an INAV board in there on a little shelf. The wings just click in easily and click out too, so easy assembly, easy to break down. The landing gear is terrible. You can pull that out and throw it away, and it has an actual built-in wheel under the fuselage. But I really like it as a demo model because it's small enough to fit on my workshop table to demonstrate programming tips and INAV setups and things like that. Doesn't fly quite as well as some of the other planes, as I said, but it's quite good, and it's functionally very, very good, I think.
Seems like a good plane for the Maytag 411 WSE flight controller.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It'd be a perfect little combination. Nice little, maybe, I don't know if it's really your first plane. Maybe it's the second INAV plane.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It seems like a pretty nice little plane. The next one is one that, because you talked about it so often, I had to go out and buy this plane. After I convinced my wife I'll never buy another plane as long as I live, and this ended up showing up. This is the Ranger 1600.
Yeah, probably in my top 5 favorite planes. The reason being, I really love the Bixler too. You know, sort of for a long time, because I love flying it, learned to fly in it, and I wanted something just a little bit bigger and tougher. And I looked around and I had a look at this, and I thought that looks like a bigger, tougher Bixler, and that's exactly what it is. 1600 millimeter wingspan. It has the blow molded plastic body, so that is, you know, tough as anything. Although if you crash it, you'll crinkle it and things will break off. You can't glue things to it, but you really need a pretty decent crash to do the damage to it. For general wear and tear, you're never going to hurt it. It has the click-in wings, which are nice and easy, really stiff and solid wings, and really long tail boom too, so it flies beautifully smoothly. Favorite plane. Great slope soarer as well. Great for aerobatics. Great for FPV. The one downside, there are a couple of downsides actually. One downside is that it's kind of awkward to get your hands into to mount up your flight control boards and things like that. There's plenty of space for it, but it's just a narrow and sharp-edged space, so you know you'll end up scratching yourself up. But it is possible. And the other thing is the motor mount for it is kind of thin plastic. I've never had one break. Well, actually, I change them out before they break. I make up these aluminium discs and just replace the disc that the motor screws onto. And someone just mentioned recently that you can buy carbon fibre motor mount discs that are perfectly suited to it on eBay, and I've just bought some actually. But apart from that, it really is the best all-round plane available.
So they actually sell that? I haven't seen that. Is that, what do they sell under the name Ranger 1600 carbon fiber disc?
No, it just happens to fit. It's designed for something else. I'll have to send you the link and you can put it in the show notes maybe. But yeah, eBay, just cheap. You buy a pack of 4 little carbon fiber discs with cutouts and screw holes and things like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that sounds fantastic. So this was the plane that, if you look at the cost of the plane versus the cost of a Bixler 3, they're very similar in price. And I was going back and forth for the longest time. I eventually settled on the Ranger 1600. And it just seems like it's all around. I love the Bixler too. It's just somehow that plane is great to fly with INAV. It's also great to fly in line of sight. So I'd imagine this is similar to that.
Yeah, in fact, I've only ever flown this line of sight. I have put FPV on it, on and off, but it's, yeah, I've kept it as a line of sight plane because I can throw it off a coastal dune and glide along the, on the ocean wind, or chuck it around for aerobatics, or it's a great camera carrier as well. Most of my flying is to, put a camera on it and get decent views of the plane while it's in the air.
So it's probably large enough it'd be very stable in flight, so that if you fly in low wind conditions, you get some pretty good video on there as well, I would imagine.
Exactly. And it handles high winds well at all, because it's got a reasonable amount of weight to it, and it's a good, efficient aerodynamic shape and plenty of power too. I fly mine on 4S with a 1200 kV motor. It handles wind beautifully, flies in light wind as well. That's what I found.
So the Ranger 2000 is essentially, it's the same fuselage with just different wings, longer wings on it?
Correct. Exactly the same fuselage and with the 2-meter wings. and this is probably one of my 2 favourite INAV planes, and I have it as much long-range FPV as I do. This is my long-range FPV plane. Yeah, efficient, super efficient to fly along on 3 amps, and stop and glide, catch a thermal on the way if you want, or slope saw back along the ridge, or wonderful plane.
Beautiful plane. It seems like that one you can also buy as a kit, as opposed to the 1600s a P&P only, I guess now. Maybe, they used to sell it as a kit, but it was about the same price as getting the servos in it as well. Yeah,
ridiculously cheap price for what you get with these planes. I think they're some of the cheapest planes around, and they're just workhorses, and they last forever, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. And then they made this Ranger 2400, which is this next one coming up here. This is a huge plane.
A monster. I think. I don't think it's an improvement at all. It's probably. The new 2400 wing, it's a lot thicker airfoil, a lot more draggy, and it's just too big, too big and chunky. With my batteries, I need 2 of my batteries plus extra lead in the nose to balance it, and it flies along beautifully. But any sort of wind, I think it'd struggle into the wind. You could set it up as a super long-range FPV plane, I think, but just too big and chunky. It was a bit disappointing, because one of my favourite planes of all is the Phoenix 2.6, the Phoenix Evolution, and I was hoping that these wings were going to be an improvement on that, but they weren't at all. They're not as efficient as the Phoenix Evolution wings, and. Good weight carrier, but yeah, just not as good a glider, I think.
It's too bad. I really love that concept, the mid-fuselage pusher plane, and that's kind of 2 meters seems like it's about the longest you need, I would imagine.
I think so. It came with this ridiculous big bush-style landing gear wheels too, which were too far back on the, virtually under the CG. So you try and take off in any sort of grass, and it just tips over, just noses over. So that was a bad design, it just doesn't work.
So speaking of the Phoenix, we're going to go into the Phoenix line here. These are ridiculously cheap on Hobbyking. This is the first one's the 1600.
Yeah, this is one of my favourite planes. The Phoenixes, I absolutely love them. I think they're absolute classics. Cheap, and they work really well. The Phoenix 1600, just recently got the version 2 of that, which is very nice. The version 1 uses the same body as the Phoenix 2000. And the Phoenix 1600, I've rigged it up as a pure slope soarer with no motor. Added a bit of extra area to the elevator, and it's just a great aerobatic slope soarer. Because it's got that blow molded plastic fuselage, and I changed it to rubber band tie down wings rather than bolt in wings. It's tough and durable for the rough and tumble of slope soaring. Yeah, really like them.
Fantastic. The 2-meter version of it's 2,000 millimeter. This one,
classic. Yeah, that's another one of the first planes I ever bought, and again, I set it up without a motor as a slope soarer, and it is just one of the best slope soarers. For the money and for the performance, just fantastic. It does have, the original version does have a wicked snap into stall, and takes a while to recover, so you need a bit of height. But all other flying aspects apart from that little surprise stall sometimes is just beautiful. It just cruise around on the minimum amount of lift on the slopes. Just brilliant. And as I've also got the latest version, the V2 version with the plug-in wings and with a motor, and it's probably one of the first thermal flyers you should buy. Really, it's a great thermal flyer as well as just a general flying around plane.
Fantastic. So if someone wants to get into slope soaring, one of these planes is probably a good...
Definitely, yeah.
Good way to start.
Sure.
1600 maybe is like, that's a little bit faster, a little more forgiving, I would imagine.
A bit more aerobatic. Well, for slope soaring, bigger is smoother, really.
Yeah.
The 2 meter is just a beautiful glider, just sort of, gentle, forgiving. You can, if you've got enough lift, you can throw in some loops and rolls and things like that as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then I didn't have it listed, but you did mention a minute ago there's a 2.6 meter version of this plane.
The Phoenix Evolution. Yeah, it's not sold anymore, unfortunately. I would buy another one just to have in storage if it was still sold, but that is in my top 5 favourite planes ever for thermal flying.
Wow.
It's a sort of a thinner wing than the 2400, and as I said, I was hoping the 2400 was going to be an upgrade to the Phoenix Evolution. The Phoenix Evolution was a swappable wing span. You could take out the centre section and have it as a 1600 or as the 2.6, and I've just permanently set mine up as the 2.6 meter version. It was quite roughly manufactured, and I've had friends who bought them and thought they were terrible because things don't line up properly and spars don't fit into the spars, the places that they're meant to fit into. But once you sort out all those those rough manufacturing things, it is really one of my favourite planes. Yeah,
that was really it's surprising how dirt cheap these planes are. I mean, you think about the quality of the planes and. Yeah. The 1600, the Phoenix 1600, at one point, back when we had a huge inventory of planes for sale at Hobbyking, that plane was selling for like $40 around Christmas time last year.
Really? Yeah.
It's insane. I bought another one. Like, I don't need it, but just in case they don't make this anymore. I'm like, it's just a great plane. Yeah. Now, speaking of favorites, we're going to go into a line of planes, especially. We're back to the Delta wing design, but these are just kind of like all-time classic planes. This is the Zeta line. The first one's the Z84. It's an 845 millimeter plane. And your thoughts on that one? This one's a beloved little plane, the wing.
Yeah, it is. It was the first plane ever sent to me for review. And back then when I started reviewing, I thought companies were just going to send me rubbish, because I actually started off reviewing little quads, and I just hated them so much that I've even deleted the videos from the channel because I just felt dirty reviewing quads. little toy quads, I just didn't like them at all. And so, yeah, someone sent me this Z84, and I think, oh no, this is going to be another horrible little model to review. But it's a classic, really. It's a fantastic little plane. I love the curvy shape of it is just beautiful with all these Zeta planes. That curvy. Total curve shape is just beautiful, I think.
It's pretty indestructible, right? It's very
it is. There's not a lot of space inside. I mean, I think you were telling me that people have put INAV gear in there.
Yes, David Story loves this plane.
It'll be a tightish fit, I imagine. But boy, it's a fast and fun little plane. It is really good.
The guy who I helped today setting his up has installed an F405 wing flight controller in it.
Oh yeah, really? Oh, that's.
I have no idea how it fits, but he did it.
So the idea is like on the C1 Chaser, which is the next plane we'll talk about. David Story, who what he does is he puts a shelf over the spar so we can put the flight controller on that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've done too, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He might have stole that idea from you.
Okay.
Yeah, he stole the Z84 from me. He saw it in the back of my car, and what's that? I got to get this. And now he loves it.
I've put a little shelf in between the two clips. There's plenty of space in there to fit. I've got an F411 WSE in there. Lots of space. But yeah, this is a great wing. This is one of my favourite wings. This and the AR wing are the only two wings I need, really. I think actually it's a bit noisy, as I said before. That these planes, this one and the following one, the prop is so close to the trailing edges, it gives that really horrible harsh sound. So I've just ripped out the motor mount, moved it back so that the motor is now fully external, and I think I'll might have put a bigger prop on it as well. So it's much quieter and yeah, very efficient. Flies around on under 3 amps if you're cruising, and yeah. Everyone, your favourite, my favourite, I think, isn't it?
It's oh my gosh, love this plane. And I've had this thing up for 45 minutes at one point on a 3S battery, 2200. It just really is a beautiful. I say the hardest part about this plane is getting it launched because it likes to dip initially.
Yeah.
But it is, you can do a lot with this plane. It comes with two different nose pieces. So one's solid, another one has cutout for some kind of camera.
Oh, right,
Yeah, you can put a little camera in there. You have to open up the opening and put a camera in there. It's beautiful for nose mounting. Just really a beautiful flying wing. It's great for line of sight. It's great for FPV. You cannot get bored with this plane. It's definitely one of the planes. If you're going to buy, maybe it's not your first INAV plane, maybe it's about your third INAV plane, this would be a great plane to get. It's the 1.2 meter is a great size, very stable in the air, and it's also something that is quite maneuverable, so you can land it in parks and places like that. You don't have to have huge fields to fly that.
Yeah.
Speaking of needing huge fields, the next one, the FX61, this is a 1550 millimeter version of the same plane concept we've been talking about here.
Yeah, yep. This one, again, it's got that beautiful shape, that full curvy shape. But again, it has the horrible noise when it's flying because the prop is so close to the trailing edge, and that was enough to put me off it initially. I loved the way it flew and it glided. But I just didn't like that noise at all. So again, I've moved the motor mount further back and reduced the noise. And it's a big wing though, 1550 millimeters, and it needs a big 4S battery in the nose to balance it. So that's why I like the C1 a lot better, I think, because it's just an easier size to handle. Very similar flying wing. But yeah. If you want, a bit more size, again, it's a beautiful slope soarer too. It glides beautifully along the slope.
So I have a simple solution to keep it quieter when you're flying. You just take the C1 or the FX61, put it up about 300 meters. You won't hear it anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point.
They're both great planes. Right. That is a pretty large plane by the time you put that together. And so, it's, I don't know, it's once you get over 1,200 millimeters, you're into a different realm when you come into wings, whatever size wing you're dealing with.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And so it's not quite the same thing. And once they get larger, which leads us to the next one, which is absolutely huge. This is the Buffalo. It's called the FX69.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous plane. It's enormous. It's actually the same wings just as the FX61, just with a wider fuselage. It's a monster. It does fly very well. I think I was watching a Kiwi friend, iForce 2D, Chris from New Zealand. He got one, and he was putting it into fast dives and finding that he's losing control of it because of the flex in the wing. It's so big and big wingspan. It was actually not strong enough to counteract the flex due to the aerodynamic forces. So he was losing control of it when he was putting it into strong dives. It was dipping instead of pulling up.
One of the interesting. Go ahead.
It's really not designed for that sort of high-speed flying, obviously. But it's a lot of foam. It really is.
The interesting thing about this group is we get to see what other people do all over the world. And there's somebody in Canada who has a similar plane to this. It's the Opterra. It's a Horizon hobby plane, also 2 meter. And he put in some super huge batteries. They can last about 3 hours. And the biggest problem he said he has is launching the thing, getting the thing off the ground, because it's just so big and so heavy.
You almost need a bungee launch or something like that, I would imagine, for that.
Mark, you had a photo of someone launching this plane, right?
I didn't save it, unfortunately.
I didn't save it. Anyways, you have to literally... This is one of those planes that you either have to have someone help you launch it, or you have to put on auto launch. Because it's just so big and so cumbersome to get that thing off the ground. Yeah,
or you need to build some kind of carrier where you can put the plane and start from the ground.
Mark and I were talking about making that, where you have those little dollies that take off from the ground. You take off and then you I think I remember in the video you actually hand launched that. I don't remember how you got that plane launched.
I tried a few different methods. I did try a sidearm launch, and I'm reasonably big and got decent shoulders, so I can give it a decent launch, I think. But I think I tried throwing it, then throttling it up once it was out of my hand. I wasn't very keen on just doing a normal overarm football launch because of the big prop, and it's not going to leap out of your hands. It's going to be quite close to your hand as it's going past. Yeah, very, very awkward launch, definitely.
The next series of planes are XUAV. This is the first one is one I think a lot of people get their hands on. This is kind of almost a disposable plane. It's relatively inexpensive. It's the X8 1400 millimeter. I believe this is the equivalent to the first version of the Bixler 1. Yeah,
it is very similar. There are a few differences, similar shape and everything, shape and size. It has XUAV on a lot of their planes. They sort of have a clamp system for their wings, so that you put the wing in. I really like it. You mount the wing in and do up the clamp, and it just holds it onto the spar. It's a really good design. I really like this plane, and I totally destroyed it very early on as well. Learned a valuable lesson about losing FPV feed as you're flying it along. I was so comfortable flying it. I was near my house. That sort of, we're in an area that there's a big park nearby, and then there's the coast to the bay. So there's a good slope soaring spot within about 500 meters of my house. So I was down there flying it on FPV along the slope, and then I thought, this is such a nice day. I'll see if I can fly it over the top of my house. So I took off back behind me over the park, not forgetting that I was down a slope and behind some very big high pine trees. So just lost, connection for FPV and radio control, and I thought I'd totally lost the plane. And I think I was telling you the other day, I'd given up on it, but I drove back through the park towards my house, and I saw in the middle of one of the football fields a group of elderly gentlemen standing around a pile of foam in the middle, and They didn't see it crash, but they saw it in the middle of the cricket field and were discussing how they thought it might have ended up there.
So the one thing, if you learn nothing else today, the one thing you should learn is that we've all taken the walk of shame at one point or another.
That's right.
You had that. Mark's had stories about him losing a plane in other cities, which is flying off to.
Standalone flight, 14 kilometers, and found 2.5 months later.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
And it was still flying. Just needed a new battery.
Unbelievable. That's amazing.
That's awesome. So yeah, the Cloud Surfer, I call it disposable only in the sense that it's so dirt cheap. That's a plane you could get for around $40 US, and they're readily available. It's a great plane though. I mean, really, it flies wonderfully. Is that something you would consider making that just leaving the ailerons off and just making it a 3-channel plane?
It wasn't that one that I did it to. It was the X9. I think the X8, the wings are reasonably straight. To make it 2-channel, you need a fair bit of dihedral or curve up wingtip. So it was the X9, which is a bit of an oddity. Is that coming up next in the?
Oh, the X9 actually isn't made anymore, I don't believe.
No.
Unfortunate.
It's a pity because that would be one of the best beginners planes around, I think, because it's sort of big and a fair bit lighter than the Bixlers and the X8. It has an undercambered wing, so you can fly it super slow, and there's so much space in the battery bay that you could put whatever you want in there for flight control boards and batteries and things like that.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But the thing is, on the Banggood website, you were never sure what you were getting because they had photos of about 3 different planes listed under this X9 listing. One of them had a V-tail, one of them was more like the X8, and then there was this one that I got, which was the X9. So it's a pity it's not available anymore, and it's a pity you couldn't be guaranteed you were getting what you thought you were buying.
We're going into the 2 other. We covered this plane already under the Sonic model. It was we talked about it before as the Nano Talon, but this one is the Mini Talon. And again, this is a name that is kind of a misnomer. It's 1,300 millimeters. That's not small at all.
No, it's a big plane. It really is. I did a comparison between that and the Talon GT because a lot of people were saying, why bother with this Talon GT? We've already got the Mini Talon, and really it's twice the size of the Talon GT, really, in wing area and internal volume and things like that. But it is a classic plane, and lots of people love it. And this is their main long-range FPV plane, but not without its problems, I don't think. When I reviewed it, I always sort of review planes at their minimum weight. I think that's just the way I like to fly. I don't want to load them up with big batteries and gear on the first flight, and I had no problems with it at all. I could push the CG right, a long way back. People were saying, you can't fly it like that. You've got to have the CG all the way forward, and that's because a lot of people load it up a lot, and then it becomes difficult to fly.
I think you put an Emax motor. You did a review on it recently. We put a new Emax motor on to it.
Was it the T motor?
It was the T motor. Oh yeah, right. T motor.
Yeah. Actually, that's another thing. It came. The motor, the plug and play version came with, is actually meant for the full size Talon, and so at full throttle, it would pull something like 50 amps or something like that, and you had to fly it around on a third throttle, for reasonable flight speed. So the gear it comes with is way too big for it. So I downsized the motor and tamed it quite a lot.
This is a plane that not only is it beloved, I mean absolutely beloved, but it's relatively cheap. If you buy the kit version, it's like around $60 US for this plane. Yeah. You can find it easily all over the place and it's I don't know, what is it about these V-tails that I had a friend who's been flying for years, and he said, don't fly a V-tail, you will never like that plane. But these seem to be just absolutely fantastic planes. Is there something about the V-tail that you really like, or?
No, I don't like V-tails really. Generally.
Generally.
The No, I just prefer a conventional cross tail. You know, it does what it's meant to do. With a V-tail, you know, the rudder never works with much authority on a V-tail, and also any side turbulence gives you pitch instability with a V-tail because it's directing the tail up and down depending on where the wind's coming from.
The main reason for a V-tail has technical reasons, especially on long-range platforms, because it will reduce the drag and raise the efficiency. That's the main reason for it.
Yeah. And often it's just to get the tail up off the ground. Like some of the slope soarers use V-tails just so that they don't rip the tail off when you come in for a landing.
Yeah.
But the slope racers all use V-tails, so there must be efficiency and speed benefits that I'm not aware of, basically.
So the next one is the full-size version of this plane, which is the big Talon, which they call it the Talon 1718 millimeters. So this is a pretty large plane.
I don't know much about this one. I've never had this one myself, but it would be a monster. I think it would have to be, for a specific, aerial mapping purpose or something like that, I would think.
This is a long-range platform, and again, I wonder, don't really do long range, but there are some people who absolutely love this. I wonder if you're new to long range, is this a plane you go for, or do you stick with a mini Talon?
I think you'd stick with the mini Talon. I think the full-size Talon, it is so big that, it's just too big to handle, too big to put in your car, too big to store at home. It's just, you would only buy it for a specific purpose, I think.
I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but the big-size Talon, I think with all the electronics installed without a battery, has an empty weight of 2 kilograms, 2.1 kilograms, and you can fly it up to 4 kilograms weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can put massive amount of battery power in there.
Oh my gosh. But the thing about that is when you get to like that 4 kilogram, that's what, around 8 pounds, 7 pounds. You
won't hand launch it.
Well, the other thing is, like, this is something that even if you've landed nicely, you can damage the foam. I was noticing, like, there were some plane reviews I saw where they were landing these heavy planes that are foam, that had landing gear on them. They're ripping the gear off, even with perfect landings.
So, I think that size and weight, maybe foam isn't the right material to be building them out of, really.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering about. That's kind of why I'm thinking like the mini Talon would probably, if I were to do long range, that'd be more towards that. The next one is we're going to the Reptile line, and they have a few interesting planes. This S800, it seems 820 millimeters. This was, first of all, this is a dirt cheap plane also, and this seems to be like a lot of guys who start up in the group tend to buy this plane. And we had one guy a couple months ago who bought this plane, and he gave it 35 launches, gave up, and stomped on it.
yeah. I can understand that. It's not a good first plane, I don't think. It was kind of unique when it came out because it was the first of those sort of nice race wings with the turned up molded wingtips, and all the place for cameras and FPV gear and things like that. But it was fast, but yeah, not so stable in the air. I didn't find. I think they sold it with a stabilizer that everyone pulled out the stabilizer and threw it away, probably.
Yeah.
Look, a lot of people like it, but I think the AR wing is way better than this one in those style of wing.
It was often compared with the AR wing, but in my experience, I never had an S800, but I knew people in the group having one, and no one of them is really happy with it. So the room, it looks big, the compartment in the fuselage, but you actually don't have really much room, especially for batteries. So it's not really suitable for long range. For proximity flying is too unstable. It can go fast, yes, that's true. But then you have flight times of maybe 8 or 10 minutes or so.
There's a guy in Norway, Christopher, who has built 6 versions of this plane. And so he tends to really like it. But his whole setup was putting an F80 on there and just kind of customize it and everything. It's an interesting platform if you want to go spend the time to do the research to figure out how to make it fly right.
If you get used to it, it may be a great plane, but definitely nothing for beginners.
Yeah, Arthur, our moderator, Arthur Hendricks, he's like, he tried everything to make that plane work. After a couple of years, he just gave it away. He's like, just get rid of it. Not a great plane.
Yeah. I gave mine away too, actually.
The next one is S1100. This one is, and Mark and I were talking about this earlier. So this is, it can be a twin motor or a single motor plane. It's 1100 millimeters. And what do you think about it?
I liked it, actually. Well, there were some terrible things about it. Terrible design, materials decisions and sort of some of the design. But generally as a flying experience, it was wonderful. Although it was very, very thirsty. Because of the twin motors, it wouldn't fly around on anything less than 8-9 amps or something like that. So
wow,
although it was very fast, you would never get good flight times out of it. Sounded fantastic with the twin motors, but some of the motor mount was terrible. I couldn't work out how to. Was it the motor mount? They sort of went high tech and used carbon fiber cut out ESC covers and VTX covers and things like that, with brass bolts going into brass nuts that were sort of just weakly glued into the foam, so you could virtually just pick them off with your fingers. So it was absolutely pointless having all this high-tech carbon fiber and brass and then just weakly gluing it into foam. It really offended me, those sort of things. I had to just get rid of them and use my own hot glued on ID card or something like that, which was better. But just a beautiful flying wing, really smooth and fast and quite aerobatic too. But yeah, some really bad design decisions.
What Steve and I were talking about is mostly efficiency reasons. So if you use two motors and you just put 5-inch props on it, it will draw amps like hell, as you mentioned, 8 or 9 amps to get in the air or to stay in the air. I think maybe the decision to have the possibility to use one center motor or twin motor setup makes it pretty flexible. So you can say, okay, I want to go for efficiency, long range stuff. You take a big center motor with a 8 or even 9-inch prop on this thing. And if you want to have smooth HD footage and completely eliminate the yaw wobble, you could use twin motor and with a flight controller with INAV differential thrust to stabilize the yaw axis even more. So it should be able to fly pretty stable with this ring.
Yeah. It's pretty stable by itself. I found it. It didn't wobble much at all. Yep. Good big size. So interesting, but yeah.
Mark had a picture of a Parrot Disco earlier that we were talking about, or showing a video of a Parrot Disco, and the similar look to the plane between this one and the Parrot Disco. This is, again, the 1100 millimeters. It's around the 1200 millimeters. It's kind of, I find that the most ideal size for your basic wing, somewhere between 900 and 1200 millimeters. That's the sweet spot. So planes in that, you look at the AR wing is 900 millimeters, the Pop wing or the Texumo is 900 millimeters, all the way up to the C1 Chaser is 1200 millimeters, the HT wing is 1200 millimeters. That whole area right there is just great for flying wings.
Yeah, good point.
Fabulous. So the next one is one that you reviewed lately. It's the Dragon. It's a fairly new plane.
Yeah.
It's a plank plane.
Yeah, that was very interesting. It had an odd airfoil, very, very thick, and had a lot of reflex built in as well. And it was just a weird concept, having a twin motor plank for flying, powered flying. It actually did fly very well, but of course, being a plank, the CG is super critical. So you really can't. You have to set it up so that it's balanced, and you really can't, put an extra camera on the tail without, seriously going back and getting that CG right again. I think in the manual, they said the CG should be around, 48. And I found that was almost unflyable at that. It was way too tail heavy. I think I had it up to 45, 40 millimeters or something like that to get it flying nicely. Yeah, really tough EPP construction, but I really think it would have been much better with a horizontal stabilizer. You know, it would have been just a great plane then. But I guess, yeah, you know, it's unique being a plank, but I don't really understand why you would want to design it like that, I suppose. The planks are often used as slope soarers, but for a powered plank, yeah, don't really understand it. But yeah, so I've given it away to a friend of mine. He absolutely loves it. He was drooling over it when he saw it come up on my review. So yeah, interesting, but yeah, didn't stay in my hangar very long.
So Mark, is that the Strix Goblin? Isn't that a plank plane as well?
The Strix
Yeah, it is.
Goblin. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, that's kind of the interesting concept. That was a plane that there was a lot of planes we were unable to review. The whole Strix line, I don't think any of us own any of the Strix planes, but they make some wonderful planes. And of course, everyone loves the Drac, but we don't own those planes, so we can't talk too much about them. But the plane concept is interesting. I find it's a. Mark had a question though about not having the tail. There was something about that design. What was it, Mark?
Yeah, that's Andrew already answered. So should be pretty twitchy on the pitch axis, I think. So as you have no how's it called? No strap in the rings. The
Horizontal stabilizer.
Mm.
Yeah.
You don't have the strap in the rings. So usually on a ring, the strap causes that your ailerons are pretty far back from the CG, so you have a long lever between the CG and the control surface. But here you don't have that, so I think it's pretty twitchy and very nervous on the pitch axis.
It was absolutely fine once you got the CG right, and yeah, I don't really understand how it can be because of everything that you said. You know, in my mind, I think it needs a horizontal stabilizer, but it actually does fly quite smoothly in pitch, which is a surprise. And it has to be all down to the shape of the airfoil, I guess.
Maybe,
but properly designed airfoil for the plank concept. But no, it didn't. It just didn't work in my head, even though it did work.
So the next plane is, well, manufacturer only has one plane that I know of for sale right now, and at least on Banggood, and that is the Blackwing by Eachine. This is 680 millimeter delta wing with a blunt nose. What are your thoughts on this one, Andrew?
Yeah, I reviewed it as the EDO Skywing 680. Yeah, I'm not so much a fan of small wings, I suppose. Yeah, it was okay. There's plenty of space inside. Has the odd notched leading edge design. It was probably too wiggly an FPV plane to be nice for me to fly. Interesting because it has heaps of wing area for a small wingspan. But yeah, I just didn't take to it really.
Yeah, actually, that's a plane that I personally I got that INAV, put in a little omnibus F4 V3 one actually. For whatever reason, when you first start playing with flight controllers, you learn pretty quickly that you should be really careful plugging the micro USB into the flight controller, the cable. So I ripped it off, but you can still get to it through what they call it, MIDI or PIDI or whatever little device, USB device. You can get into it and hook it up onto the board, and I was able to get that thing reconfigured again. And it's really, I don't know, I find it to be, first of all, it's a dirt cheap plane. It's about $35 typically on sale. And I think the last time I bought it was $32. And it performs pretty nicely in INAV. I will give it credit. I was more surprised about how well it flies with a good flight controller setup. And I've had that thing out a kilometer and back, and it's perfectly stable. Not really a high wind kind of day kind of plane, but it's for something fun and small, something to play with. It's a cool little plane. Okay, so we're going to talk now about some planes that you have maybe not personally owned, but probably has some ideas how well they would fly. These are a few different planes. These are the bush planes, and the first one is the Tundra, made by Hobbyking, or offered by Hobbyking. Have you seen this plane before?
I have seen the plane. I would have bought one many times if it had been in stock over the last 12 months. I keep one of those planes. You know, I sort of scroll through Hobbyking's latest current planes or whatever, every now and then, and I always pause on the Tundra and you know, hover over the purchase link if it's on sale. But you know, the cheaper ones are never in stock, unfortunately. It looks like a great plane, and I think, you know, eventually I'll buy one somehow. But yeah, I do like the bush plane concept. You know, the short takeoff and landing and bouncing down on long grass and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
There's oversized tires on it so that you can land in grass, and it's just all around great plane. I've got a friend who owns all these planes, and he said by far the Tundra is the best plane because it's the smallest one. It's 1,300 millimeters. The next two are 1,400 and 1,500 millimeters. But it's just really all-around fun plane. He definitely has his favorites. The next one is the Timber. This is a Horizon hobby plane. It's 1,500 millimeters. And Mark can actually talk to this one.
Yeah, a friend of mine, the same guy with the Bixler 2, he has one. He bought one in summer. He crashed it a few times, unfortunately, and we just INAV'd it to have basic stabilization and return to home in case he flies too far away, because he only flies line of sight. And this plane is really amazing. We did the maiden. I made a video, I think, it's also on YouTube, about the maiden of this plane. And he was just pulling down the flaps, raising the throttle. You can't hear it if it's 50 meters away. It's so quiet, and it was rolling, I think 3 or 4 meters, and then just pulled off the ground, and it was flying like on rails, absolutely smooth. And if you're, I would say you can run beside this plane. If you fly low, you really literally can run beside it. It's so slow and so nice flying. Even if it's windy, it's very stable. I really like how it flies. The only downside is it's pretty expensive. So I think for the full setup with motor and all the gear in it, the plug and play version, it's about 270 or 280 euros in Germany.
Right, that has the AS3X in it. That's I know we don't get into that typically, but that's a whole Spectrum thing where it has flight stabilization built into it, and so it's kind of the
270 version. Not for the 270 euro version. It's without stabilizer.
Yeah. That's only about $210 here. I know it's cheaper here in the States, but it seems like it's a great plane. Again, Tundra is definitely the one to get. The next one is a close second, this guy said, which is the Kingfisher. It's an FMS plane, and it's interesting. This one's 1,400 millimeters. Again, it's a Bushmule plane. He absolutely loves it, but it's the only downside, he said, to this plane is that when you put the flaps on, it can tip stall. Other than that, it flies very slow. You get some pretty good flight times out of it. It's a recommended plane. So, anyways, these are the Bushmule planes. I think they're great for people. A lot of times, people want planes they can fly at parks or somewhere where they have somewhat stable ground they can land on, and these are great planes for that. Dirt, a great example. If you can fly in like some kind of path, land on a path, it's perfect. The next one is the Bushmule. I know you happen to have this plane. They did quite a bit with it, Andrew.
Yeah, I really like the Bushmule. It's big. It's is it 1,500 millimeter wingspan, something like that? But yeah, it's a cargo plane with a cargo door, so you can have fun dropping paratroopers out the back, or what I did was, you know, put one of my little spare cameras on there and parachuted a camera out. In some ways, it has a similar problem to the binary in that the wing area isn't quite big enough for the plane, for a cargo style plane. Yes. And again, I added wing area by adding a strip of 30 mil, 6 mil Depron along the trailing edge to increase the wing area. It means you can fly it slower, like a cargo plane should be able to fly, I think. But I recently tested the F765 wing board, the Maytech,
Right.
which is the ridiculous overkill board with twin camera inputs and 12 servo outputs or 10 servo outputs or something like that. So this was the perfect plane to test that out with the switching cameras and extra. I had a pan and tilt on there as well, plugged into the board, and
really sipped it up.
Just anything you can think of, you can plug it into that board. And this was the perfect plane to test that out on. Initially, I thought it again, because it's a twin motor with lots of drag, big wheels. The flight times were quite short, which annoyed me. I don't like short flight times, basically. So I've put smaller wheels on just to reduce the drag a bit, and that's extended the flight times a bit better. But yeah, great fun plane. Difficult to land. It wants to bounce on landing all the time. You really have to have no wind and absolutely get the landing right to get a smooth landing. Otherwise, you'll be bouncing down the field.
Huh? Yeah, it seems like a neat plane. The next one is the local hobby shop planes. These are made by Horizon Hobby. This is one I know you happen to own, but an older version of it, like I do. This is the Radian. It's a 2-meter glider. It's a 3-channel plane, so it just has elevator and rudder and a motor in front.
Yeah, Radian's an absolute classic. Lots of people love it. I love it too. It's the best thermaling plane you can buy. It is ridiculously good at catching thermals because of the lightweight, undercambered wing. Beautiful curved up 2-meter wings. Yeah, a classic plane. Yeah, just everyone should have one, I think. I haven't got the night version, and I don't know if the night version's a good idea, really. It's just ruining a perfect plane, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have done some FPV thermaling with this plane, listening to the variometer beeps and using the FPV. I didn't have return to home, so I actually got a bit concerned because it's so easy to spiral right up, and you don't really know where you are in relationship to home anymore. So yeah, would probably benefit from if you're going to do that sort of thing, FPV slope thermaling, then return to home INAV would be good for it, I think. But yeah, great plane, absolute fantastic.
What's interesting about the Radian is that this is like the third version of it. They had one that was I forget the first one. Then they switched over to a different manufacturer. But the first version was you just essentially put the wings together inside the tube, and it goes together in 10 seconds. So I had a friend who loved it because he went to the beach and he could put it together. He'd take his beach chair and his cooler and the plane under his arm and take it to the beach because he had it in pieces, and he put it together. It takes 10 seconds to put together. Huge plane. 2 meters is a very large plane. But this thing flies like a kitty cat. It's just perfect in the air. It's definitely one of those classic planes that everyone should own. They came out with a second version of this plane where you had to put screws in it to hold the wings on. But it was very similar, I would say. The one thing I would say about the Horizon Hobby planes is that they're very good about keeping their stock inventory of these fuselage and motors, even for the older planes. So this one was one I would build. I didn't buy at the store. I bought the parts and put it together because there's only a few parts. There's only wings, the fuselage, and then a horizontal stabilizer. And then as far as the motor mount, you can take there's an Emax motor that fits in it perfectly. It's 25 by 25 millimeters. It mounts on there, or you can buy a motor mount from Small Parts CNC and put a large variety of different motors in the front of it. But they try to come out with the same version of the plane, but with ailerons. It was known as the Radian Pro, and it lasted a few years, and they stopped selling it.
Yeah.
Right. I would say if you'd like that plane, you're probably better off with the Phoenix 2000. Similar concept.
Yeah.
And so all around. The next, is there anything, the one thing about the hobby store concept is that a lot of these planes are designed for airfields. I would notice that you need landing gear. They come with landing gear, and you need to have smooth runway to take off and land. And there's only a couple planes that really stand out. The Radian was one. The Opterra is another one, which is it's like the HD wing. It's 1.2 meters, and they also have the 2-meter version of it. We talked about it before. It's mixed reviews. Some people love it, some people don't. Some people have had a lot of fun with the 2-meter, like Sky Hero. Love that wing. There's the Opterra 1.2 meter. I don't know. Maybe that's not on your radar. I know you don't particularly love wings, Andrew, but it's an interesting plane, and they had it on sale for a fairly cheap price, and a lot of people bought that around just the last couple months, I would say.
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it really. I know people love it. That's about as much as I know, really.
And then they came out with one they just introduced last week. It's called the Twin Otter, and this one is again another twin-engine plane. If you looked at the photos of it, I wish I had a better photo. The propellers, the motors are actually very close to the fuselage, and I was wondering, is there any advantage to having motors close to the fuselage or further apart?
I don't know. It might be just a manufacturing thing, maybe. No, I don't really have any thoughts on that. I don't know. I know the Bush Mule is similar. No, don't really know.
I think I'm not sure if there's a big advantage in aerodynamics, but maybe it helps to keep differences in the ESCs or motors not affecting the yaw. So if the motors are further apart and the RPM of the motor don't match because they are not synchronized, this could cause a permanent yaw drift if they are further apart.
Yeah, they're trying to do something interesting with that. They're trying to introduce. The reason I bring it up is this is one of those few planes you can actually. It comes with fairly decent sized landing gear, so you can land it at a park, and it also comes with skis, so you can land it on water. And so it kind of reminds me a bit of the Tundra in the respect of the size and the kind of the market they're going after. But it has 2 motors as opposed to Tundra's 1. But I'm trying to be supportive of Horizon Hobby when it comes to planes like this, because this is more along the lines of what we look for of INAV pilots. But it's we'll see how it goes. I haven't heard anyone buy it yet. I know they had a shipment of it and they sold out right away, so the next shipment's coming out in the middle of January. So wish them luck with that one. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up with your favorite. I want you to just kind of imagine. You're going to let us know what your favorite 5 planes are. These are the 5 planes that, your wife said, okay, enough of the planes. You got to get rid of everything. We're going to move to a condo. You can only keep 5 planes. These are the 5 planes.
Stop talking, please. No, you asked me this question quite a while ago, and I never got back to you because it's caused me a lot of stress trying to get it down to 5 planes. I tell you, I keep changing my mind daily almost. I tried to reduce it down to the different disciplines, I suppose, and I can only get it down to 6. I'm afraid I haven't got a 5. I've got 6. So, slope soaring, slope soaring is my primary passion, I suppose. I'd rather be slope soaring rather than anything else. And there's the LaFish aerobatic slope soarer that we talked about the other day, which is just the most aerobatic. It's called, what is it, VTPR, or aerobatics close to the ground. Just a fantastic slope soarer for doing 3D on the slope, I guess it is. And there's also the Phoenix 1600, and I have an ASW 28 wing on a Phoenix 2K body, and they're all favourite slopers. But I would have to pick, I don't know, the LaFish would be my favourite slope soarer, I suppose. So that's number 1. Thermal gliding.
Unfortunately, that plane is made by Flying Foam that went out of business. They closed down about 6 months ago. So got a collector's item there. Hold on to it dearly.
Yeah. For thermal flying, there's the Phoenix Evolution 2.6, which is my favourite thermal flyer, I suppose. But I also have a DLG, a discus launch glider that I absolutely love.
DLG, disc launch glider. So the idea is you throw it like a discus, I would imagine. Yeah.
I don't fly it very often, but it's hanging in my bedroom, and I look at it every day and absolutely love it, and I would never get rid of it. And there's the Radian 2 and the Phoenix 2000, but probably of all of these, my favourite would be the Phoenix Evolution 2.6 as a thermal glider. More so than the Radian, because you can play more with mixers and switches, and you can muck around with the camber and reflex and crow braking and things like that. So Phoenix Evolution thermals. Scale planes, I love tiger moths, and I've made a scratch-built tiger moth, and I like putting a pan and tilt FPV rig on the tiger moth and tootling around. So for scale planes, it's the scratch-built tiger moth. For wings, I like the C1 Chaser and the AR wing. Of these, I think the C1 Chaser is the favourite at the moment.
Wow.
And INAV planes, the Talon GT, the Ranger 2K, and or pan and tilt on a scale model. I guess I'd probably go for the Talon GT for the favourite INAV plane.
Mark Kaufman's happy. Check him out. Big smile on his face.
Yeah, it flies beautifully, and it's so easy to work on. You just pull everything apart and plonk it down in front of yourself at the computer, and you can work on it. General flying, the Bixler 2 or the Ranger 1600. I'll toss a coin. I'll say the Ranger 1600 for that one. So there's my 6 favourite planes in each different discipline, I suppose.
Wow. Well, thank you for... I was going to say, it's a pretty big condo if you have a 2.6 meter plane.
Yeah. It's just hanging up here. We've got an old house with high ceilings and picture rails, so I can actually hang them from the walls. Our walls compete with the patchwork quilts and planes, and the planes are winning at the moment, I have to say.
So now we can tease the moment we've all been waiting for, the 5 worst planes.
Yeah.
These are the planes that you reviewed and like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. The classic worst plane was the original Volantex Mini Ranger, I think it was called. It was the 575-4, about a 1.4 metre. And it had a few problems. It had the thrust angle of the motor was slightly wrong. So if you powered up, it would dip towards the ground. If you throttled back, it would do a backflip. And the rudder and vertical stabilizer wasn't effective enough, so it had terrible adverse yaw. Like you'd go to do a turn, you'd end up in a knife edge and just, not get out of it, basically. So that was an absolute shocker. And it shows how much I really wanted Tundra. I actually cut this one up and turned it into a Tundra-style bush plane.
Wow.
And called it the Vundra. So yeah, that's one of the worst. There was also another XUAV plane called the XUAV-1, which was a big V-tail pod and boom style plane that had a prop that rotated around the boom. It had a gearbox and a bearing that went around the boom, and the prop rotated around the boom. And this was such a dangerous setup. They actually provided a protective glove with the plane when you bought the plane. And that gearbox and bearing setup was very, very sloppy. It just had the most horrendous noise, and it was so dangerous that I actually cut that one up as well and turned it into a really good slope soarer. What else? There's another classic bad one was the Mini DLG. It's a 980 millimeter built-up balsa DLG from Banggood, and it's just it just didn't fly like a glider. It had too much dihedral on it, and the boom was so weak that after the maiden it was basically broken.
Is that the U something U-Max U-Line?
The U-Glider. That's a fantastic plane. I should have included that in my favourite planes actually. Okay. No, this is a little DLG. I think Hobbyking have versions called the Raven, but they're better quality than the one that came from Banggood. That'll about do it, I think. But yeah, my worst ever goes to that original Volantex Mini Ranger, which was just total garbage as it came.
I remember that review. Yeah, you're trying to make it work. I was like, how much are you going to do to make this thing fly? It was just this horrible. Well, fabulous. So that was the worst of all of the planes you've ever reviewed, was that little Ranger?
I think it was. Out of the box it was, yeah. Oh, the F-35 EDF jet that I reviewed recently was a shocker too. The EDF wasn't powerful enough to get it off the ground, basically. And it's a very old model made from old weak foam, as it came, you could barely get it off the ground, and it would break when you landed it. But yeah, I've swapped out the EDF for a pusher prop now, and now I quite like flying it. It's probably one of the fastest planes I have, but not the way it originally came.
Well, fabulous. We went through an awful lot of planes today. I absolutely want to thank you on behalf of myself and the group and Mark Hoffman. This has really been a treat to find out, which planes really stand out in your mind. Yeah. Definitely, we should call this the Andrew Newton Christmas shopping list special.
Yeah, that's right.
What to buy, not what to buy, and kind of got some good ideas. Something for everybody in here in this list of planes. And there's other great planes for sale out in the market, but we unfortunately can't get to all of them. But this is just and we reviewed nearly 50 planes, and there has to be like 5 real gems for anybody in here to fly. So
it's interesting that Andrew Newton agree on great planes too.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And so, Mark, before we go, what's your next plane if you're gonna buy a plane now that you're on this list of planes we just reviewed today?
Okay, to be honest, I have a list of multiple planes. I think the next one will be the Dart 250G.
Dart 250G.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's worth having.
Yeah, it's especially in spring, the weather will change very often. So this is the plane where I can say, okay, it's the next 2 hours we will have sunshine, then it will rain again, so I can quickly go out, fly a few rounds, come back. I don't have to set up a lot of stuff. Yeah, but the list is pretty long right now.
You just buy the foam and you put your own flight controller in there and your own motor and everything, just trying to make it your own customized.
I think it will. I will get the plug and play version.
Oh, okay.
Without the co-pilot, but with stock motor and stock servos. But I will also order another motor just to have a comparison and just swap it out later.
Fabulous. And out of curiosity, Andrea, before we go, the plastic servos that you have in these planes, a lot of these planes come with plastic servos. Have you had any issues with them?
Yeah.
You mean...
which particular? You mean generally?
Generally, plastic servos, yeah.
After a hard landing, servos often strip out. If I'm building something myself, I'll always put Metal Gear servos in. But look, as long as you're gentle, as long as you don't crash too often, they last reasonably well. Yeah.
And then, as far as motors are concerned, really having the cheap motors. There's a lot of cheap motors that come with these planes. Have you had any issues with those other than the ones that came with the AR wing?
I think motors, 1 or 2 have behaved oddly, and it was probably, I can't remember which it was. Some of them, but it could equally be ESC problems as well. And I have enough spares that if something is acting up, I'll just discard it and put something else in. But yeah, definitely, a few motors have gone dodgy. Very rare, though, I have to say. More often than problems with the ESCs.
Right. The ESCs probably died before the motors. Well, there's, I would say those Racer Star motors, the little $5 to $10 motors, which are about as cheap as you can get. Oh, Mark's shaking his head. He hates these things. Yeah. But, if you're setting up a plane for the first time and you're trying to keep it budget for whatever reason, trying to decide if you like it or not, they're not bad little motors. And then you can always upgrade later on to something much nicer. But Mark's like, what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I think the Racer Star, I have a very bad mood when it comes to Racer Star. The stock motor of the AR wing, I think it's also manufactured by Racer Star, so it was holding about 4 or 5 battery packs until the bearing started to rattle. I have over there a few packs of 0703 motors, these really, really tiny ones, with brass bushings for little ropes. And I think from 10 or 12 of these motors I bought, 2 were dead out of box. I had 3 with bent, how's it called, bells. And 4 or 5 just died on the first flight. So, yeah, you're not
a fan of it.
With Racer
I don't know. the BR2212 Racer Star motor, I've had used those things, the 1400 kV version of that, and that thing is pretty much rock solid. It's a $5 motor. It's okay. I mean, once you get used to it, then you replace it with the Sunny Sky. But it's for $5, it's not a bad little motor, especially if you're getting something up and running.
So,
and I would imagine.
I mean, if I compare it with this one, the Sunny Sky X2212 Mark III, I have put my AR ring 3 times into total pieces. This motor is still absolutely fine.
Yeah. So that's right. And Andrew's advice is he likes that because you have the screw-on shaft as opposed to using those prop adapters that bend. Yeah. Well, fabulous. Well, thank you very much, guys, for today. This has been really a real treat today. I really appreciated the time. I know we weren't feeling really great today, Andrew, so I appreciate you hanging in there with us.
No, I'm just running out of voice, that's all.
That's great. We talked about planes all day long, so this is going to be a great podcast and video for people to watch. Appreciate your time, and people can check you out on YouTube. Absolutely worth following. Your channel always has something new and interesting. It's never quite the same. It's not all about planes. You talk about cameras, you talk about kites, you talk about just about anything. Everything's different. You'll take boxes and turn them into planes. So the real love for flying. Seriously, you took the Boxler. It was a Bixler box that you turned into a plane.
That's right.
You got your wife out flying it. You were driving RC cars the other day with the cameras on them, FPV. Yeah. So this is fantastic. We really appreciate the enthusiasm you have for the hobby and what you do for us. You've helped me out so many times. I really want to thank you for all your videos. You help me without even knowing it. You make these videos and I'll sit there and rewind and watch over again. How do you do this? And that's how he did it. Yeah. So again, thank you for being part of the group. We absolutely enjoy having you as a member, and we'll look forward to seeing your videos in the future.
Beauty. Thanks very much. Great stuff, guys.
Thank you, Andrew. Bye, guys.